All right, we are back on the Honest Right Campus podcast with the returning guest, Brother Martin Faulks. Once again, thank you so much for joining us. You were last on in 2021, if I recall correctly.
It was that long ago?
It was either 2021 or late 2020. I should check. I'll put a link to the video, but welcome back.
Yes, I think, well, thank you. First of all, thank you. It's an honor to be back. It was wonderful to be here there last time, and it's magnificent to be here now. But yes, I think everyone's lost track of time a little bit because of the pandemic. There's a few years where you think about them, and I think some of our assessment of time as humans is based on change and events and that kind of thing. So when you've been in lockdown and your days become a bit routined, time zips past. So I think that's why people have got sort of a bit of time confusion going on now. Not that we're in lockdown anymore, which is superb. As you're probably aware, all the restrictions are being lifted in Great Britain.
Well, that does bring me, this is something we talked about offline. As restrictions are being lifted, what have you seen in terms of Freemasonry in England? Is it growing? Like, what's it been like upon the easing of restrictions? And what's the response been like for Masons?
Right, so there are a number of factors all working together upon English Freemasonry at the moment, all having what I can see as positive events, for positive outcomes from outside. So first and foremost, the lockdown caused a lot of people to apply to join lodges and to think about joining. Maybe they were at home, and the idea of joining a club or getting to know like-minded people seemed very good during that time. And this was coincided with some wonderful positive publicity from the United Grand Lodge of England. I've got to say that I've seen things in the press and on the news that I never thought I would see happen. And so I've seen our Grand Secretary being able to explain in plain English that everyone could understand in a very eloquent manner in front of on prime time television what Freemasonry is. And I've seen newspaper reports about good works we're doing and that kind of thing. And the press has been a bit confused and has misunderstood Freemasonry in England for quite a while. So to see this switch has been a big, exciting thing for me. So the combination of people waiting and people wanting friendship and brotherhood and this wonderful new publicity have kind of combined. And that means that I can see a very significant number of new people joining. And there's kind of momentum to that, isn't there? If you can imagine right now, there's 4 new people in your lodge. They kind of know people and they get on with each other, and it adds a different feel. I think when a lodge gets a bit small and there's not many attendants, it doesn't feel like a celebration so much, and that changes. So momentum, success builds success. So what I can say from my vantage point, and I kind of know this because obviously our company, Lewis Masonic, I'm the managing director of the publishing company, the world's oldest Masonic publishing company that serves English Freemasonry. I can see when someone's buying a book for a new initiate or a ritual book for fellowcraft or that kind of thing. So I can tell you there's a very significant number of initiations taking place. I've got a friend who wants to become a Mason. He's based in London, and I can't find a lodge that hasn't got a waiting list of a year.
That is
and
awesome.
some of them up to 2 years. It's and not that time doesn't go quickly. So if if you're watching this and you're thinking of becoming a Freemason, and someone says it'll be a year and a half, you'll be surprised how quickly it comes around once you get yourself on that list. It's time's funny like that. So yes, so it's going very well here, and there's a lot of very exciting, positive things happening as well within English Freemasonry, which I think is adding to that kind of buzz.
And not that also to your point, and before we go any further, Michel Brassard, worship brother Michel Brassard, he's been on the podcast a couple of times. He stopped by the temple, so I figured bring him on because he's...
Hello, Michel. Lovely to meet you.
Same here. He's one of the most active Masons in, well, I was going to say the district, but I would guess Ontario. And a big credit to Harmony Lodge. You brought up the wait list. Another thing to mention, and this is something I try to emphasize, and our Grand Lodges emphasize, and Michelle can speak to this as well. If you are on a waiting list, at least in Ontario, and I'm curious for the English perspective, right? That doesn't mean you can't be involved in Masonic activities, refreshments, like we've still been meeting virtually. Harmony is returning to in-person meetings in April, but we've had our candidates and our applicants take part in our virtual meetings the last year to get to know them and meet with them, right? I think sometimes in Ontario, at least, one of the problems can be an application gets sent in and then, nobody contacts them. They're contacted for the application process, but they're not invited to any social events or social functions or to meet any brethren. Kind of the next time they're actually in the lodge is for their degree, as opposed to getting the chance to meet the brothers and get to know each other beforehand. A year and a half, that's a long time, and that's a good opportunity to get the chance to interact with the brothers in social events and social functions.
Yeah, so I think that's a magnificent suggestion. And it's worth noting that there are different types of lodges in the Constitution. Some of them meet every month. Some of them meet 3 or 4 times a year. So it kind of depends on which kind of lodge you're joining. And it could be ideal for someone if you're a very busy businessman. 4 times a year might be about right for you. If you're very enthusiastic and want to be learning ritual and really involved in charitable activities, and actually that may not be enough. The virtual meetings are quite good as well, because not everyone is ready to go back to lodge yet. Restrictions, as we said, have been lifted, but some people are a bit concerned. Some people may be vulnerable and want to stay home for a bit longer, just to let everything blow over. So it's good to keep people included, isn't it? It's good to keep people included. Don't forget those past masters or long-term members who are at home and not able to attend.
And now I want to go on to, and this is something Michelle and I talked about. You mentioned Freemasonry growing applications in England for lodges. When you're declining, that presents its own challenges, but when you're growing, that can present challenges too, especially if a lodge perhaps has spent a couple of years without doing degrees because of the pandemic or just anemic growth. How do you think lodges will cope with an influx of applicants? And do you think Masonic lodges, I'm speaking of at the lodge level itself, have the necessary infrastructure and membership in place that they'll be able to handle these degrees and cope with success brings its own challenges, and how do you cope with those challenges?
Oh, yeah, yes, indeed. Yeah, so we're all a bit rusty, and I've been at lodges where I can see people and they're a little bit taking a while to get back into their stride. I myself made some silly mistakes and thought, well, come on, it hasn't been that long. So we're all a bit rusty with things. So it's good to warm up. There's a book I recommend called The 5-Minute Ritualist, which has got sort of disciplines as to how to refresh ritual and get the procedures all back in the mind. There is an excellent system in place once in England called the membership pathway, which shows lodges how to deal with new members. And I think the regularity of the meetings means that we only do one or maybe two at the most initiations per meeting. So there are some jurisdictions that do sort of a lot more than that. So I think we're probably okay. I think it may be that some brothers might have to wait a little bit between their degrees. I had to wait a year between each degree myself. So and I don't think it doesn't do you any harm. And one thing I will say is there was one Masonic province that rented. They booked every lodge room in Freemasons Hall, our headquarters in London, and they initiated 100 Masons in a weekend. And this is, again, this was individual rituals, make it very special and focused. So yeah, there is a bit of momentum there. Now, with growth, obviously, we've probably got halls and rooms and things for a higher capacity than we've got at the moment, because there has been a decline. There was a big boom in Freemasonry after the Second World War. In times of hardship, people like to have some friends and brothers around them, so that tends to make a difference. But one thing which we need to be aware of is the economy of scale helps. If there's just 20 of you and you're booking a meal or doing something, it's very different than when there's 300 of you. And in the old days of English Freemasonry, there were Masonic halls that had full-time live-in chefs, actually, that lived above the temple, where they had downstairs, you could go and play snooker, and there was a bar where all the drink was subsidized, because there's just so many people that they could do well, they could get, more boom for their buck. So I think it'd be nice to see if we can sort of start to do that. But this is the intriguing thing. So at the moment, I'm not sure. Is it that there's a waiting list and a lot of things that got the right attention from the right people, and that it's going to calm down? Or is this the beginning of some momentum that's rolling? There's going to have to be a momentum effect. Let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. There must have been quite a few people who haven't come back as well. I don't know the figures, I don't know this, but there must be some people who got used to fishing as a hobby and didn't go into town and see people and thought, actually, they haven't really started back up. And of course, COVID hit the most vulnerable members of society, and the average age of Freemasonry is quite high. So we must have lost some of our brothers during this time. So it's an interesting thing to judge. And I'll update you. I'll be sure to come back and tell you in another year's time, has the ball kept rolling? Has it expanded? One thing I do know is the other orders, the ones you can join after being a craft Freemason, they've had a big influx of people. So it looks like when people are coming back, they're coming back with a bit of gusto. They come back and say, yes, brilliant, let me join something. I want to be exalted into Royal Arch. I want to become an operative Freemason. I want to, that kind of thing. So yes, I think that's a good sign as well.
I like your perspective when you say it's a good problem to have a backup. It's a good problem to have in a lodge. For me, when I'm thinking about candidates, I also don't want to cheat them. It's an experience that you live through. I'm glad to hear that you had to wait a year. Is it by choice, or is it by, you had no choice? Too many candidates.
No choice. This is just the way. My lodge is a very old, very traditional lodge. It does everything just right. And I must say that, that's an objective point of view. It's not just me as a member. It really is a wonderfully disciplined and routined place. So Burlington Lodge, number 96, founded in the 1700s. And they've got a routine of just making sure that everyone gets time to learn, and it's quality, not quantity. So a lot of lodges are, wow, let's get lots of members. Burlington's, do we need any more? Do we want any more? Is it we're gonna? It's really about getting it right. And I think we don't need to hurry. It's a long time a master mason, isn't it? You know, so once you've done 3, it's a long time in your life, and then it's a long time a past master. So there's no hurry. Savor every bit of it. And as you say, let's not cheat candidates. The aim is to inspire and to bring around a change and to let them see the beauties of the ritual. Let's make sure we do it when we can do it well. So I think that's good. One thing people, you know, don't tend to think about is the quality of the performance, as it were, and what difference it makes. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to be word perfect or every the timing has to be like a professional stage performance or anything, but let's do our best to make sure that we do as well as we can, because that must have a difference for whether the person thinks this is great, I want to carry on doing this, or whether it has an effect, whether it touches their heart. It's a big thing. But this is not new. These sentiments have been expressed since the earliest writings of Freemasonry. Let's get the ritual right. Let's make sure it's the right people. Let's not make it too easy to join. That's another traditional position.
I think you're right with the quality of the experience is very important. That's how you keep your momentum. Because as we suffer attrition through, you know, the sphere of old age, we have no choice, right? So the only way to do that is to really provide a great experience so that person could pass that experience on to their family or to a friend. And so organic growth is possible and momentum when there's quality of the candidate who will respect the quality experience that he's having. And I think you're absolutely right in what you say. It's not that easy to achieve, though.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but this is an interesting philosophical thing about how we do some things in life. So I'm not saying we don't need to be able to tell people what we're doing, or that anyone running a business or living a life needs to do that. But here's something mysterious I've noticed. If someone is doing something in their life or around me that I think that's not skillful or clever, if I talk to them, if I say, hey, you know, you need to be more polite to people, they're getting offended or whatever, even if I time it right and I'm eloquent and I reassure my good intentions and I explain it all, even the best possible mission, it's got like a 3% chance of the person going, right, you're absolutely correct, Martin, I'm going to change my course of action. But if I look at that, if I look at what they're doing, I think, okay, I'm going to make sure I never do that. So if I'm more polite around that person, you know, it's a random example, that person, I find that's more effective at inspiring them than me saying it. Wow. Now, changing that to other areas, there are some people, you know, they're running a business and it's all about telling people. It's all about saying, look what we're doing, look what we're doing. But the product itself isn't so great. And I've actually seen this in different areas where actually just making sure what you are doing is fantastic has actually worked really well. I know someone who teaches a yoga class and he's genuine, his heartfelt connection with it, and he plans it out and he makes it inspirational, and he really spends his time so involved in it that his enthusiasm is contagious to anyone that goes there. Never advertised, and the class is always full. And then there's people, they've got their website and Facebook page and Twitter, and they're doing videos and they're doing leaflets and everything, and they're struggling. And it's the same I've found with other things. So with books, if I write a book myself, if it's from inspiration and genuine and something I need to get into the world, everyone will love it. If I think, oh, that I could do that, that'd be popular. No, it's a mistake. So the quality of what we're doing is really important. And I think making sure that both the actual ceremony, the inspirational play at the beginning of the meeting, and the festive board. I think in Canada, not all lodges have a festive board, but I don't know how much.
Well, there's the festive board that's like the official to do, which is rare, but it happens. And then there's refreshments, which are either before or after lodge, which is a regular.
Okay.
Occurrence.
Okay, so
boards are more of a special occasion type of thing.
So in England, it's normally the lodge meeting and then a festive board, a meal afterwards. And if you make sure that those two are absolutely spectacular, the best you can do for the people who are already there. So don't worry too much about getting more people. Make the other people there go home thinking, wow, that was like I'd gone back to the Renaissance. That was so inspirational. That meal, the people I was talking to, they're so uplifting, and so supportive of everything I'm doing, but so interesting. And the food was so good, and the environment, the ambiance was great. And wow, if you make them go wow, it's sorted. That's what I believe. And the rest kind of is nice. It's good. I'm not saying you shouldn't have a lodge website. I'm not saying you shouldn't have anything that tells people, but I think isn't it saying charity starts at home? Well, make sure what you're doing is great and genuine first. Make sure that the thing's so good. But yeah, that's my position, and I've got to say the people around me are doing it, and there's a lot happening like that. So that's really good.
I'm not sure how expensive masonry is in England. In economic times that it's really tough, like through the Western world, it's people are not working full time, or masonry, let's face it, takes a little bit of money, a commitment. Do you think it's a stumbling block? Is it like that in England? Might it stop the progression of masonry, even though there's enthusiasm, we'll call it, in the marketplace?
Yeah, there is a never-ending debate. We've had those debates in our lodge, almost every lodge I know of in Canada, probably, but at least that I've been a part of, has at some point or another debated whether or not to increase dues, by how much. And the debate is, does increasing dues result in loss of membership or increased membership, better or worse? What's the English perspective on that? Okay,
so once again, I'm speaking as an independent person. I don't know when you say what's the English. It's English perspective. I've got no idea what the United Grand Lodge of England's perspective is on dues or anything like that. It's just me. I don't think it's very expensive, and what I have noticed is some people who are concerned about the expense aren't concerned about the same kind of expense in other places. So I question whether, so far, I'm not saying there aren't any people who are genuinely, I can't afford that, but there are inexpensive lodges, especially in provinces, and it tends to be the rates are based where you are, and often they've got family members or a caterer who is very kind. They're not doing it for profit, so you can get an inexpensive but very good meal. But what I've noticed is that the people that say to me, God, this is too expensive, this Freemasonry, or sometimes they say to one of my books, they say, we've published this beautiful, full color, lovely book on tracing boards. We've done this one, it's just on the first degree tracing board, and it's £25. They say, that is terrible. I can't afford anything like that. And then they go to the bar and buy £60 worth of drinks. And I think, wow, it's not that it's too expensive for you. It's too expensive by the value you place on it. You'd rather buy £60 worth of drinks and not have the book than buy a lemonade and have the book. It's about what you want in life.
Well, I think that's, sorry to interrupt, but I really like that, because I think that applies to my biggest complaint with not so much Freemasonry, but Freemasons. this is certainly reference in terms of money, but I think the same value judgment, it can be placed on time. I mean, how many brothers, they say they're too busy to attend lodge, but they're not. They're choosing to spend their time on other things. I just think
yes, their time and their money. So here's the thing for me, so as you know, my love in Freemasonry is about the improvement of the mind. I love the memory work. I love the rituals. I love the contemplation. I love the philosophy. That's where my real focus is. But there are also other benefits and other sort of side effects of being a Freemason. I'm a member of another order, which emits only Freemasons, called the Societies Rosicrucia in Anglia, SRIA. I sit amongst people and they're as excited about my projects and my things as they are their own. And they're all doing such creative and inspirational things. Do you know, I think in my own hierarchy, I would let go of a lot of things before Freemasonry. I'd let go of my television and the subscription for, the kind of shows most people pay for on that. So sort of, I'd let go of the more expensive eating out. I'd let go of a lot of things before Freemasonry, because it teaches you a lot of lessons just by being there. You end up sitting next to people, don't you, in Freemasonry, especially if you travel, that you'd never ever meet. You could be next to a member of a royal family in Europe or something, or next to a guy that sort of works as a butcher or whatever, and you could be any religion, any nation, anything, and you learn to get on with them. Funny thing, you learn to get on with the people you don't normally get on with. That's the strange thing. I always remember when I meet someone, I think, God, they get under my nerves a bit. I think, well, they're putting up with me. So I'll put up with you. You're my brother.
Then you meet them in lodge.
yeah. That's what I mean. I mean, in lodge, sometimes in lodge.
No, I'm saying you never know who you're dealing with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You never know. And so charity, a lot of charity is giving someone the benefit of the doubt, and so stuff like that. So yeah, I think there's the hierarchy with it. Now there is in marketing, of course, and in sales and marketing, they've got a thing they call the Haagen-Dazs effect, which is the ice cream manufacturer. They thought, oh, we want to sell more, and they put their prices down. Well, this is the story anyway. And when they put things down, people bought less of it because they thought this is lower quality. So people think the value and the price are the same thing. So when they put the price up, people bought more, and they thought, oh, so they put it more up to reflect the value. It's the top brand. That's what they're saying. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what the truth is with Freemasonry, but my concern is if you keep lowering it, then you might get people who don't value it, and they might think that it's not a high value thing. So I think we've got to find a balance. One thing I do think we need to do is have some provision for flexibility if someone has hard times. You don't know what's going to happen in life. You can have some guy join your lodge and he's at the top of his career and making a lot of money, and he's got a lovely car and a house and everything. He could get ill, or something could happen to the company. If he comes along and says, I cannot pay, I actually can't pay, I think there needs to be some provision. If you can see that's genuine and the person's genuine, he's your brother, even that there must be some provision to say, okay, don't worry, we'll pay. And when you're back on your feet, it's going to be okay.
That's the mosaic pavement, right? Which I think is in England too. The Canadian, we have part of our lecture in the first degree deals with the mosaic pavement, which is that very idea, right? Of peaks and valleys in one's life. Mm-hmm. I want to go way back to the start of this interview, something you said, because I'm curious for the English perspective on this, or an English perspective on this. You mentioned the last boom period in Freemasonry, unless perhaps it's this one. We're in one right now, knock on wood, but the last one being after World War II. We saw a similar thing in North America. The two biggest boom periods for Freemasonry in Canada and the US was after World War I and after World War II. I believe this is true of Canada. I know it's true of the United States. There's never, 1959 was the last year, like that's as high as Freemasonry has ever been. It's been lower every year ever since. There's been slight bumps up, but 1959 is when it was the highest. And I'm just curious, I suspect, and I think I talked to Michelle about this, I think that the Vietnam War or the response to it, there may be some lessons for Freemasonry in that, just because that war, from the American perspective, and Canadians did fight there as well, was as brutal as World War II, was as brutal as World War I in terms of loss of life and what they went through. Yet you didn't see a boom period for Freemasonry after the end of that war. You didn't see soldiers returning and joining lodges the way my grandfather did after coming back from World War II, and the way my great-grandfather did after coming back from World War I. And I think there's a lesson in there somewhere. I think there's something connected to that, to the idea of during that period, how people viewed institutions, and maybe a lack of faith in institutions because of perhaps how poorly the Vietnam War was received. That resulted in a loss of trust in institutions in general, whether it be Freemasonry or government, that type of thing. I'm just curious. I mean, I don't know to what extent, if at all.
No, now this is very interesting contemplation. So yes, so on the beginning level, we could say troops come back. They're used to saluting someone. They're used to a hierarchy. They're used to a lot of friends around them. Wow, all the clubs could do that. You could become a buffalo, an old fellow, a woodsman, a forester, a free gardener, a Freemason. There's, all these societies, but Freemason, of course, being the biggest and most certainly the best. Most people ended up joining that. But there's the other side to it, is to do with whether you believe or whether you like the idea of, as you say, institution. And in a time where there's distrust of institutions, are we in a bit of a confusing situation whereby actually a lot of the institutions are telling you what to do, whether it be a religious institution with someone at the top saying, do this, whether it be governmental saying, do this. And if we're Victorian, gentlemen, we have great respect for the institutions and people in authority. Modernly, maybe not so much respect. Maybe we don't think that institutions have got the best of our wishes at heart. Now, of course, Freemasonry is a voluntary society whereby it's about inspiration rather than command, isn't it? There's someone's trying to put on put together a situation where you can bring the best you out, and where you've got a group of allies and friends around you that can support you in life and to spend good time together. So it's a bit different than those institutions, but it has got the formality, it has got the rank and so on. And it's a bit interesting, isn't it, Freemasonry? So everyone's equal, we're all brothers, and here's the hierarchy. You think, well, what do you mean? So from outside, that might be a little bit confusing, understanding the hierarchy is about the jobs you do. Yeah. And I know a lot of Freemasons, when they get promoted, think, oh no, more work. Yes. So rather than about some sense of that person's better than you. Everyone is most certainly equal in Freemasonry. So I think you're right. I think we need to perhaps communicate a little bit to people and make clear that, this is a different kind of situation here. This is not you joining a institution in the sense that you're going to have some kind of people telling you what to do and commanding you. This is joining a society which is uplifting and inspirational, and you could leave at any time, but we will always remember you as a brother if you need our help. Because I don't know if you in England, once a brother, always a brother. You come and say, help, I need, all the Masonic charities are there to support you, even if you just turned up for your initiation, but there's no trouble if you don't want to come anymore.
I'm wondering about the English perspective. Perspective is the thing here. that I'm gonna broach. Over here, it seems like at least in North America in general, we're like the Jews of the Second World War. We did everything wrong, and we're the problem in society. Is this similar in England? Are you the bearing the brunt of the accusations all over in media everywhere? I mean, there's a lot of it going around. And how would that? Do you think it will affect Masonry in general long term?
I mean, yeah, just as a quick example on that, 3 Masonic temples in Vancouver, British Columbia were set fire to. 2 of them destroyed completely. Another one, they got it before it was completely destroyed, but significant damage. There's other temples that have been vandalized recently. I do know though in Ireland, the Grand Lodge of Ireland was attacked. I think they tried to set fire to it, if I recall correctly. So are you seeing kind of a resurgence in perhaps some of those resentments, conspiracy theories, that type of thing?
Yes. So isn't it interesting, even in this day where people are trying their best to treat people equally, and there's a lot of focus, especially in the British Isles, on accepting diversity and equality, there's still some people who think it's okay to hate certain groups of people. And the justification to hate tends to vary depending on where you are on your political spectrum. Some people think it's okay to hate those beneath them, or who they see are beneath them. Some people think that as soon as they think someone's elite or superior, they can hate them as well. And sometimes I do meet some confused, prejudiced people. And when I say, you're Masonophobic, which is a term Robert Cooper from the Grand Lodge of Scotland coined, it's a kind of like and so, do you hate anyone else? Do you have any prejudice against any other groups? It's a surprise to them because they haven't thought of it in those terms. They haven't realized that it's like that. So yes, there are still some people who have got great misinformation and misunderstanding about Freemasonry. One thing I have found, and this is after working for a Masonic publishing company, serving Freemasonry, interacting with people for approaching 20 years. Can you imagine? I get sort of 60 to 120 emails a day. Can you imagine how often I've interacted with anti-Masons? I found I've tried to discuss things with them, and a lot of the people who are very, very upset, I've got big problems, mental problems. So, we've got a lovely book called Working with Unashamed, which conclusively shows if you're Christian, Freemasonry is a great support to your Christianity. And we've got the red triangle, which shows how the lies that this anti-Masonry is based on, and it's the same as the sort of same lies that people use against Jewish people, and shows that these documents aren't real. Shows you could use it in a court of law. But the people who are like this, they're in a funny place, and I tell you how much so. I'm waiting for the one when they don't eventually tell me that they've been diagnosed with a serious mental illness. I'm talking to them saying, come on. And they'll say, yeah, but my doctor, he's also Freemason, says I'm schizophrenic. And I think, oh no, another one of these. So what can we do? What can we do like this? Well, I've got to say, in England, the publicity, there's a great team at the United Grand Lodge of England, and I think they've sorted this. They've started to skillfully interact with newspapers. They've skillfully interacted with the press. They've found ways to put what Freemasonry is into modern language. So instead of trying to hope that the outside world will suddenly understand our Masonic speak, they've found ways to explain it. And I've seen the most wonderful publicity. Are there still going to be some confused, crazy people? Yep, there are. But I hope that the person on the street now in the United Kingdom, and particularly in England, has probably got more of an accurate idea of Freemasonry, probably understands that we're the good guys. And even if they don't want to be part of it themselves, they kind of see it. They know that there's a lot of charitable things happening because of it, and there's people wanting to be better people. One big thing that we've seen a change here is that the women Masons are far more prominent, and that's very good. In the modern day, one of the big criticisms people come and say, why don't you let women in? And they say, good news, there've been female Masons since the 1800s, and you can join if you want. There's plenty of options. So they're more prominent. So I think that sort of stops some of those concerns. So yes, as you say, of course, there are problems with people thinking we're behind all the troubles in the world, and but I don't know if they're convincible people. I think some of the people who are setting fire to those lodges and stuff, I think it's going to take 400 hours of therapy to solve that. There's no leaflet we can produce. There's no open day that's going to convert them.
Well, it goes to
so deep into it.
I mean, and it goes to the double-edged sword. I mean, I'm one of my favorite movies. This will make sense in a second, I promise. One of my favorite movies is called Bug. Everybody should watch it. It stars Ashley Judd. It's from 2007. I love that movie, but it's about basically a woman who doesn't start out crazy, but she has a lot of problems and issues in her life and a lot of risk factors, and she falls into kind of conspiracy thinking, and it ends up very badly for her. It's not about Freemasonry per se, but just generalized conspiracy thinking. She finds kind of a comfort in that type of thinking at first that leads her to make some not so good choices. And the double-edged sword of it is, part of me feels, as a Freemason, and I don't know what you have any thoughts on this, part of me wishes whenever somebody jumps up on the internet and says something foolish or conspiracy minded about Freemasonry, part of me thinks, I wish we could just censor that and stop them from saying that, because somebody else will see that and they may take comfort in that idea and then, go down a rabbit hole themselves. But I also recognize there have been times when, historically speaking, when Freemasonry itself has been considered an enemy of the state. Germany, World War II. And if we censor that, could somebody else come along one day and try to censor Masonic messages? So how do you, find that balance of not letting lies and misinformation spread without becoming too heavy-handed in that approach?
Yeah, so what's happening, again, this is me talking as someone observing this happening, rather than, I'm not part of the people doing it. But in England, there is, our Grand Secretary said, enough is enough. From now on, no one's going to be able to say something in the press or on the TV about us, and we're not going to challenge it. The policy used to be to remain quiet and just let things flow past. No. And you can buy a pin badge. Go to the lewismasonic.co.uk. It's got the United Grand Lodge of England's official sort of logo on there, and it says "enough is enough" around it. So we are encouraged to say, "Hang on, no, don't. That isn't correct." So we are. So there's I think the media awareness and ability, both amongst there are communication officers and representatives and people like that, I think has been going up. There's been media training and so on to help us communicate the truth, because this is the truth, that Freemasonry is a force for good. Now, as you say, how do we find the balance? Well, yes, there are some regimes normally which are almost always extreme zealots or totalitarian regimes that sort of go, let's say, no Freemasonry. Why? Because they don't want any group meeting, because they want to hold on to their own power. Then there are some odd occasions where people come up with their own confused, warped version of Freemasonry. It's not real Freemasonry, and they try to take over the country or something like that. that kind of insanity does happen when people go, "Oh, I could start my own club," and they kind of hide, they kind of pretend they're Freemasons. So you get that, and that's when some government has had to go, "Oh, hang on, that is happening." So these are the two occasions when that occurs. Now, here's what I do myself, because obviously I'm in a circumstance quite a bit, is I'll make a judgment. If the person to me seems rational and they're asking honest questions, I'll answer them all. And if I'm at a party or a gathering and someone says something very anti-Masonic, I will say, "Hang on, I'm a Freemason, don't be." "Well, what do you mean?" If the person, however, as we mentioned before, isn't someone who's going to respond to anything rational, I get a Facebook message telling me that the secret pharaohs are running the world and that I'm one of them, and then I'll just block them. If you start to talk to people like that, was I think, is it Plato? Don't ever argue with a madman when people walking past won't be able to tell the difference. And you end up in all sorts of crazy stuff. And it actually, they're so well educated about it. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some areas where you think, no, I'll have you know, I do know what's in the 33rd degree. And yeah, you shouldn't be worrying about that at all. So there are some areas where they don't know. There's other things where they know other groups and other stuff. In the truth, one of the things about conspiracy theorists and stuff is they're actually, for me, who's had a whole lifetime of management work, I've been running publishing companies all my life. It's actually, I love the ambition of it. That you could actually, if the world's turns out the world's flat and they've been pretending it's round, so it's spherical. You've probably heard that theory, that you could actually get every space agency and every one with a theodolite, every one, measuring or doing any kind of architectural work to keep that quiet. I think it's wonderfully ambitious that you think that people can be that quiet and organized, that they can actually do that. The truth is, if you look at our governments and you look at what they do, we could do more competency in working together, not less. I mean, America went into Afghanistan and said, we're going to get there because there's going to be mass weapons of mass destruction, and they said, no, I'm sorry, there weren't. So they went to the Middle East to look for these weapons of mass. No, sorry. I mean, you'd think if they were up to anything, they'd have said, no, yes, there's huge quantities. It's fully justified. Now you can see there's actually a more honesty than you'd expect going on.
Yeah, anybody who thinks, I've said before, and I think I've heard it said from others, anybody who thinks the Freemasons are running the world has never seen us try to organize a dinner. Right? There's a lot.
No, I hate that dinner booking thing. I hate it. There must be a program somewhere. If you're watching this and it, put it in the comments section. There must be a computer program where you can go, right, upload your menus, right? Put the prices in, email to guests. Guests get email saying book dinner. They click in, they say what they want, they pay their money, it's booked. If they want to change it, they log back in, they change it. Because if you're a lodge secretary, your life is this. Do you want to come to the dinner? Here's the menu. I say, yes. You say, yes, sorry, I should have said, can you tell me what you want from the menu? And they say, I like the fish. And you say, no, there are 3 courses in the menu. What do you want for your starter? And, your pudding. And they'll say, I like the fish, I like this, like that. Brilliant. And you say, right, I haven't noticed you paid. And they say, oh, sorry, did I not pay? Okay. And it goes around like that. And they change their minds. And you're doing that for 70 people. And no matter what instructions you ever come up with to make it clear, there is no full routine that means that everyone will just tell you what they want, pay the meal, and then turn up. Or not.
I feel your pain. I feel that pain.
Yeah. Anyway, so there must be a program. there must be a program for that we can click. Oh, if it isn't one, your software development, make me one. We will sell it to the world. It's not this Masons that would love this. There must be
Anybody who's been a junior
automatic-
warden would know that.
Junior
Yeah.
warden too.
Junior
yeah.
wardens would attest to that. I realize you don't speak on behalf of all of English Masonry. We follow English Masonry in North America. But about, across the channel over there's the French Masonry. Do you see a time when they might come together if the numbers get too low at some time in the future? Or is it, these are old ways of thinking, right? The French versus the English. So I'm wondering if you personally, or, is there a sentiment where you might see the two Masonries combined?
Okay, so there are regular Masons. There's a regular Grand Lodge of France, which is accepted by the Grand Lodge of England, and that works all well together, so that is happening already. I know that there are other forms of Masonry in France, some which are more humanist and some which are co-Masonic, men and women. I don't know whether they're ever going to come together quite as much, but let's hope that we've all found ways to work together, even if what we want to do is a bit different. So I think matters of mutual support are very important. And I think they already are together, but there are some people doing slightly different things. And maybe there could be more teamwork, even if it's not sort of joined, if you get my drift. I think that'd be quite nice. If someone's saying, I'm raising the money for this, or I'm trying to help this, maybe everyone could chip in. It doesn't quite matter what you're doing. So there are my thoughts. But yes, I think French Freemasonry is very inspirational. A French Mason will read 10 times what normal, a English speaking Mason would. You go into any French bookshop, and there's a section on French Freemasonry, which would be a whole library. It's quite amazing. They're really thoughtful, wonderful Masons. And I've seen some publications translated, and I thought, wow, this is really high level, beautiful stuff.
The reason I asked the question, a few years ago, we had a gentleman, he was 75 years old. He was from Lebanon. He came and he joined Harmony Lodge. And we had to start him at the first degree, which I found sad. Eventually, it's just, I thought, wow, the divisions still exist. And it's perceptible and real, because we had to give him his first degree for him to join Masonry in North America, because we follow English Masonry. It's been very interesting. Yeah. It's an interesting journey, Masonry.
It is, yes, absolutely. Now, and I have great sympathy for someone who's joined, a slightly different constitution that isn't accepted in another. But I also have great sympathy for the need to try to get consistent recognition and understanding that we're all doing the same thing. It's important to know out there are people doing things that are not in line with anything anyone here would agree with. There are people whose rituals are violent, who get charged a huge amount of money for their degrees, who aren't really what I would see as Freemasons. Mm-hmm. There are people who they're doing other kind of things which aren't quite as extreme, but they're not really what we'd like. They're grand masters, of certain constitutions that say, yeah, I'm in place and you can't throw me out. I'm changing the constitutions so that now rule number 1, Grand Master is Grand Master for life. These kind of things. And God, there must be someone at your Grand Lodge and in my Grand Lodge and everyone like that who's dealing with that craziness, and they're having to go, right, no, you're not accepted anymore. Because you've accepted those other people, and we can't have our people visit those other people. And if we accept you, we've got to accept them. There must be all these knock-on effects, and so on.
It's it's one of those things, right? Everybody does it differently. We want to make sure we're being as consistent and true to the ritual as we can be. And with that, we are presently at the Masonic Temple. We are creating some whiskey packages for upcoming tasting, virtual whiskey tasting. So we got to run. But thank you so much.
Well, virtual whiskey tasting, that sounds like a fabulous thing. I hope we've got some
I sent
Scotch. Some
Well, I
Scotch
mean-
whiskey, have you there?
It's Alistair's creating. I don't know what type it is.
He's one of our brothers gonna do a presentation of different types of whiskeys and
Okay.
explain how they create it. And those that are like yourself, you could come. He was saying he sent you a link.
I shall have a look. Thank you.
You could have,
Yes.
you could have your own shot of whatever you like too, right? But it'll
Yes,
be interesting.
I don't have any whiskey on hand. It'd have to be green tea, but I just hope I was wanting to make sure that there was some proper Scotch whiskey there. Anyway, it's been an honor to talk with you once again, and I'll keep you up to date with other things at a future occasion. Thank you
Much
very much.
appreciated. Thank you so much.